Welcome to the podcast, the Here Brotherhood podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
We're so stoked to have Mitch Whiting here, finally. Finally.
Years in the
fun.
making.
Years in the making.
Yes.
Finally here.
Mitch is just a legend. He came to a few of our retreats over the years and spoke to the groups, and they were incredible. And he's just been such a friend and a collaborator and a mentor in many ways. And man, we're just so glad that this worked out. You're finally on. You're finally here.
Yeah, it's such
Finally
yeah,
aligned.
Really.
Finally, you're in town and able to make it work.
So
Mitch has been here from the very beginning, which is kind of crazy to think about. There's very few that have been there from the very beginning.
in the early
And
stages.
so Mitch has been very foundational. So we're just so glad to have you.
Thank
So
you.
those who don't know Mitch, he is a performance coach, and his focus, I love this, it's helping family-centered leaders live with passion, deepen their relationships, and make more money. In a world that glorifies endless hustle, Mitch teaches that true success is defined by your ability to be deeply present. And I'll just pause on that because there's a lot we can already dig in there. What do you think when you hear performance coach? You know, there's a lot of associations, or just life coach, right? There's
Mhm.
a lot of associations that people will come up with, and it did include like financial success, and there are those kinds of metrics. But tell us about like what are the metrics that matter most to you?
Yeah, the metrics that the world focuses on is success. And success, we all know, each define differently. But if we wanted to all define it the same, success is getting what you want. And it's different because what we want differs. But fulfillment or true success is becoming who you are. So there's getting what you want, which will make you successful. But fulfillment and true success is becoming who you are. And there's multiple paths that are taught throughout this world of how to become. One of them, which I believe is the false path, is to decide who you want to be and then become that. But rather, I believe that you can't become someone different or someone better, but you can only become who you really are. And Michelangelo helped me to understand this when he said that he didn't sculpt David, but rather he took everything away that wasn't David. Meaning, the perfect man, the nickname of that statue, already lives within us, and it's the stone that by removing we reveal who we really are. So children, and we could ask everyone in the audience, I don't know everyone who's listening, but there's something that I'm pretty confident is true, which is that everyone listening was once a newborn baby, right? I think we can all,
For sure.
yeah, we don't remember it, but we think it happened.
Pretty sure.
So we were all newborn babies, and if you have ever had the opportunity to have children or observe nieces and nephews, children that are newborn babies, you realize that children don't have to learn peace. They don't have to learn how to love. They are at peace. They're full of love naturally. What we learn as we grow is how to suffer. And that's the stone, the granite, the statue beyond the statue that we're trying to let go of, I have found to be our suffering. And when you let go of suffering, you return to your natural state of peace and of love and of curiosity and of power. And that's who you really are.
Beautiful. Okay, I want to dig more into that, but first I do want to take a step back and just ask a little bit about your path of how you got into doing the work that you do now.
Yeah. I had an awakening in my life in 2021 when I went to the doctor, and the doctor asked me a question that ended up changing the way I lived the rest of my life. And it was a simple question. I could have never known in that moment how much it would change my life. And this nurse said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? At the time, I'm serving as a leader in my church. I'm getting a master's degree at night. I am working at the largest company in the world in a role that many people take 12 to 15 years into their career. I'm married to my best friend. I have my first child. From the outside looking in, everything looks awesome. And so I think about this question genuinely and thoughtfully, and I say probably like a 2 out of 10. And my wife is with me at the doctor's office, and she says, "Are you kidding me? You're like a 9." And so I'm really caught off guard because I'm Mr. Positive, right?
The question was how stressed are you? Okay.
And I'm saying I'm a
You
2 out of
think
10 in
you're a
my
2.
stress.
Okay.
And my wife interrupts and says, "No, you're a 9 out of stress." Right?
Quite a discrepancy.
Yeah, and it's kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing,
Yeah.
right? And I'm thinking like this nurse, poor nurse, she is not a therapist. She's not paid enough to do what she's about to do. And she didn't obviously address it, and we moved on. But a few weeks later, I was talking to one of my mentors, And I was just expressing the true thoughts instead of just the positive thoughts. I was sharing truly how I was doing. And he said, listen to me. He got very serious. He said, you're Mitch Whiting. That meant something to him. It didn't mean as much to me at the time, but it meant something to him because he saw me for who I was. He said, you're a leader. You're a high performer. You love people like I've never seen before. But do you realize you view yourself as a wounded bird? And it hit me so hard I had no argument, no defense. It actually clarified something for me. And I knew that he was right. And I said, I don't know what happened. I don't know why. And it was so real that for me, I love meeting people. I love loving people. I love getting to know everyone around me. And at that time of life, we would go downtown where we would inevitably run into people that we love in our community. And before my wife would see someone that we would want to talk to, I would point her to another store and say, hey, let's go check this out before, so that they wouldn't have to ask me how I'm doing. I didn't want to talk with people, and that's not the real me. And so I go on this journey to try to figure out, how do I find happiness? How do I not live a 9 out of 10 stressed life? And I went to the one thing that I was sure would change my life forever, and it was self-help. I went straight back to self-help. At this point in my life, I have 20 years of obsession with self-help because my dad, when I was 10 years old, would pay me to read self-help books. So I start with this book, Grit, that someone had shared with me before.
Angela Duckworth? Is that Grit? Something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that's her. And I didn't even have enough grit to finish the book, to be honest, right? And I could feel like grit wasn't the answer to my question. And so then I found this guy named David Goggins.
Oh, gosh.
And I read his book, and I'm like, you got to learn to love to suffer. You got to live with your demons, and then you'll be happy, right? Then you'll be successful. And I even remember interviewing for my next job. I was trying to get promoted. And I remember in their interview saying, I love to suffer. And the lady was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, this isn't working. Abort. And so then I'm like, I read this book about changing your environment and how that will change your life. Then I'm like, okay, sweet. So it's not like grit. It's not loving to suffer. And just a side note, for anyone who is following this line of embrace your suffering and love it and just live with your demons, I really believe that you don't have to suffer if you can learn to heal. That's not actually the path, is just embracing and living forever with your suffering, but you can be free from your suffering. And so I'm reading this next book, and it's 2020, where I can't change my environment because I'm stuck with a card table and in this tiny bedroom with holes in every door. We were trying to pay off debt aggressively, and it was just not great, right? And so then I'm like, okay, I need to change my habits, because I find this book, Atomic Habits. And I know that book has helped a lot of people. And when I ask people, how are your atomic habits 6 months after reading the book, I've yet to have someone say like, oh, autopilot, no big deal. My whole life has changed.
Worked.
I'm rocking. It worked. Instead, they're like, oh yeah, I need to read that book again because that was so good. And then, that wasn't working for me. And so I thought money is the problem for sure. I just need to become an entrepreneur. And if you have a job, you're a loser. That's what YouTube taught me, right? And it wasn't true. That wasn't the problem. And so then I'm like, it's not my job. It's passive income that I need. I need to have vending machines, and I need to have Amazon FBA businesses, and I need to white label ebooks and sell them while I'm on the beach, and my life will be good because then I won't have to work. I'll be rich, and all my problems will go away, and then I can be present. Then I can be happy. Then I can be at peace, because I won't have stress. And what I realized eventually is that I was missing the manual to the greatest technology of this universe, which is the human brain. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't have the tools and the resources to do the inner work that would allow me to manage and move through my stress, my suffering, my overwhelm, my self-doubt, my comparison, all these emotions that I was feeling, to just be who I really was. And that journey ended up opening up the difference for me between self-help, which I realized is perfectly named. Self-help wasn't bad either. It wasn't the problem. It was that I was expecting it to transform my life when the word help was in the title. It's helpful. It's motivating and inspiring when I'm doing it, right? You can go in the cold plunge. You can read a book, you can listen to a podcast, and you will feel better. But I found that that was temporary.
Band-Aids.
Yeah, they're Band-Aids. Self-transformation is the difference is self-help is temporary, self-transformation is permanent. It's the difference between reframing your thoughts and rewiring your brain. And as I learned how to rewire my brain for permanent change, I started to get my time back from spending in a suffering state. At the time, this 9 out of 10 stress life equated for me when I actually looked at my life and how much am I really stressed? It was 50 hours per week. And I was missing out on the key moments of my life. And I was afraid that I was going to wake up 27 years from now and realize I didn't fulfill my potential. And I was so frustrated that God, family, friends, health, and hobbies were my top priorities, but work remained my number one priority in practice. And I felt guilty for giving my family what was left of me instead of the best of me. And what I really wanted was to be emotionally and mentally in the same place I was physically. I wanted to be deeply present. And so I went on the journey to find the answers. And now I help others learn how to become deeply present so they can be who they really are full time, regardless of their circumstance.
What would you say were the resources, mentors, the people, or maybe there was some self-help book that was, differentiated in some way to you? Like what were the tools that helped you kind of unlock what you're talking about? You went on that journey, but like, can you point to like, oh, this person or this book
or
this
moment
or this thing is kind of what helped me like come to this new realization?
Yeah, there was so many things. And I think that's the nature of how life actually works, where it's typically not a single moment. Single moments can shift our life, but single moments don't typically answer everything in our life. And so it was mostly like the 20 years of obsession with self-help, with also I've always been a disciple of Jesus Christ. That's a big part of that is my faith. And so I've been my whole life searching for spiritual truth, right? So it's like I've got the psychology and philosophy from self-help. I've got the spiritual truth from God. But then I ended up finding some principles of neuroscience that really ended up kind of being the cherry on top, where it's like I learned from so many mentors, so many books, so many YouTube videos, I even, worked with different coaching programs and digital courses and showed up to masterminds. Some I didn't belong there at all because I wasn't even like the person they were trying to serve, but I was just showing up to be in these rooms where people thought differently than me. And I ended up finding these principles of neuroscience that allowed me to rewire a belief in a single moment. And that was so different than what I had previously believed, because the neuroscience that I had understood at that time was that you can rewire your brain through repetition, right? Neurons that fire together wire together. And the more we wire that same type of thinking, the more it will solidify, which is absolutely true. But what I found was the nature of that work was reframing my thoughts. Every time I felt like I wasn't good enough, then I would say, I am good enough. And I would feel good. And yeah, I am. But if you have 6,000 thoughts a day, and some research says 60,000, so I don't know why it's so vastly different. So I just say 6,000. If 90% of them are negative, which is studied, then how exhausting and how unsustainable to reframe every single one. Because if you do it successfully for one day, you've got to do it the next day. And you've got to do it the next day and the next week and the next month. And so I found that when I was reframing all my thoughts, I was on fire. It was so awesome. It was working. But ultimately, that pattern didn't work for me over time because I just kind of got tired. And I reverted or resorted back to my suffering state.
Because it wasn't rewired.
It wasn't rewired.
You were just changing how you felt about something.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And it's the self-help. It's helpful.
It stops the bleeding, but it
yes.
doesn't heal it long term.
That's exactly right.
So I think there may be a lot of people listening that listen to this story and are expecting some big moment. And you talked about the little moments that make a difference and just over time. And I in theory I believe that, but there's a part of me and I think a lot of people that are just kind of waiting for some big moment or some big learning, and they have happened, right? So I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking, but just wondering about your thoughts on that. How do you What is
Was
the
there
catalyst? What is the moment? What is
Yeah.
the thing for you that shifted?
was there one big rewiring moment for you?
Yeah, I think this is a really important thing to understand, and it goes back to the first question you asked, which are what are the metrics?
Yeah.
And we talked about success versus true success, but the specific metric that changed my life, and really this is the moment, was understanding how many hours per week I was spending in a suffering state instead of a powerful state. So there's two emotional states. There's a powerful state and a suffering state, and we're never in both simultaneously. We go back and forth between them. And this question, even though it was worded differently, changed my life from the nurse because it put me on that metric path of tracking how on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? And the way that now I help people calculate is to say, well, let's just pretend in this magical world we're sleeping 8 hours every night. I know it's not happening for everyone. Parents of young children, I see you.
Yeah.
Right. But if we were, then we have 112 waking hours each week. So you can pause and think through your week or your day, and you can say, how many hours am I in a suffering state? Or the answer is the same to this question, how many hours am I not in a powerful state? And so that's one metric, which is how much am I suffering? And because
Well,
Yeah.
what would a powerful state look like, for example?
Yeah, a powerful state typically is things like peace and confidence and love and patience and creativity and resourcefulness, but not always. And we can get into that. It's not actually that simple, but there's a very simple definition. Suffering state is typically stress, overwhelm, self-doubt, hesitation, judgment, shame, comparison. It's typically
Anxiety,
what doesn't
depression in
feel
there?
good. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's these emotions that don't feel good typically, but it's actually not true because anger doesn't feel good, but can be really useful. Fear doesn't feel good, but can be really useful. And so the question is, how many hours per week am I in a state that doesn't feel useful?
Mm.
And versus how many hours I'm in a state that does feel useful, because the powerful state is emotions that feel useful, and a suffering state is emotions that doesn't feel useful. And this helps because I was always trying to be a positive thinker. I quit positivity a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone from my life. I was just trying to feel good emotions all the time and silver lining things. And I wasn't allowing and experiencing the full range of the human experience, which is to feel all of our emotions and to find the messages within the ones that are creating suffering so that we can actually heal the true cause of our suffering and become who we are again in that moment and long term. And the more we do this work of rewiring our beliefs and changing our emotional state permanently from that thing that was causing our suffering, then the hours each week that we're suffering lessen. And we start to, if you get 10 hours a week back every week, or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, then it compounds over time, because 50 hours is 200 hours over 1 month, and you keep multiplying that over years and your life takes off. So that's one metric of how stressed am I, or how many hours per week am I spending in a suffering state, and addressing the suffering instead of trying to become powerful. So much of the problem is trying to be better and trying to get to a powerful state, trying to prime yourself for the day with a morning routine, when children don't need a morning routine. A 1-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old don't need to read 10 pages, go to the gym, hop in the cold plunge, meditate, and then they're feeling great to go about their day. They wake up so passionate and energized about life that when they wake up in the morning, they got to go wake up everyone else in the house. Experience it every day. They are so energized and passionate about life that at the end of the night, they're like, one more book, Dad, please, one more book. And I'm like, they're falling apart emotionally exhausted because they're so tired, their little bodies. And they're like, I just want to live, Dad. I love this life, right? And they aren't afraid to fail. They get up every time they fall down as they're crawling and walking. And they don't escape emotions, right? They're not looking to social media to numb themselves. They'll throw a tantrum right in public, right on the sidewalk in front of everybody. And then the next second be laughing their head off, not needing to return because they're just present in their emotions and they're not afraid to allow them. That's who we really are. That's our origin. That's where we came from. And we just learned to suffer. And by letting go of the suffering, we can just return to our natural state of power.
So can I double click on that a little bit? You got me a little emotional there, just thinking about just kids and how amazing they are. And for the naysayers of everything you just said, because there's a big part of the manosphere that talks about just manning up and getting away from your childish tendencies and becoming a man and so I think there's a lot of discomfort for a lot of what you just said. It's, oh, but those are childish tendencies. Like, why would we want to return to that? Or people that are don't like the idea of like the inner child.
Sure.
It took me a while to convert to that because
Sure.
it sounded so like
Sensitive and so,
yes.
yeah.
So how do you talk to that? How do you
Yeah, I think there's a difference. Well, there is. There's
Talk
a
to the
difference
naysayers.
between being childish and being
Mhm.
childlike.
Yes.
And so the work is to become like a child. Jesus said to become like a little child, right? And so we want to be childlike, but not childish. And there is this putting away childish things that's part of becoming a man and an adult or a woman. And so the focus would be the difference between focus on doing things that a child does versus being as a child is. It's not about doing and acting like a child. It's about being like a child, which is full of love and patience and peace and forgiveness and creativity, where you can, so full of belief where you can be an NFL football player and an astronaut and a firefighter, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And we get jaded with life by these lies, which is that we're not capable, we're not good enough, and it's just not true. Our natural state of power can carry us to limitless possibilities if we remain in that state.
So where do those all come from? How do we? I know that's just the natural part of growing up in society, which is jaded generationally after generation, just jaded from the hardships of life. Like, how do you? That is a fact of life. Like, life does get harder, or maybe that's just a lie I've decided to.
Well, the reason why
but
it gets harder is because we suffer more, and because when we're in a powerful state, and you can tell me if this feels true for you, when you're in a powerful state, do hard things feel hard?
not as much.
Not as much. It's like amazing what we're truly capable of when we're in a powerful state, and we could find endless stories of humans doing unbelievable
Yeah.
hard things from a powerful state, and they bring us to tears, right? And so your question is, how does this happen? The majority of our beliefs are formed before the age of 7 years old. Okay, a belief is the meaning you assign to your experience, and it even starts in the womb. So it's really 0 to 7 that we assign most of our meanings. It's not a problem. I've been tempted to call it a problem. I call it a challenge. It's not a problem because I think it's by design.
Yeah.
It's a challenge that we form the majority of our beliefs at such a young age when our frontal lobe, the rational part of our brain, isn't fully developed until around age
26?
25.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so, no offense to you and me, but we had tiny unintelligent brains, right? And we were assigning meaning to things that just weren't true. Well, a belief is also the lens by which you experience reality. So I'll give an example from one of my clients who lives in the Philippines and grew up in the Philippines. He moved from one place to another when he was 7 years old. And his teacher was so impressed with him after the first semester because out of the entire school, he was the second highest performing academic student in the school. She gives him the report card and says, "Run home, tell your parents." So he's running home as fast as he can. He gets to his dad and he hands over the resume. His dad is a very loving man, amazing father. And his dad says, like, "Wow, you can be number one." And he sees his son's potential and he's excited to help him. Well, with this tiny unintelligent brain, he didn't see the complexity of what was happening. Instead, he just assigned the meaning that I'm not good enough for my dad because I'm number two. I'm not number one. Was that true? No. Did he believe it was true? Yes. It was the meaning he assigned to his experience. And with that new belief, now your belief is the lens by which you perceive reality. And so he now does show and tell. And in this show and tell, everybody loves it. The class loves it. They want to hold his stuffed animal too. It's great. And the teacher doesn't look up. She just writes something down on a piece of paper. And what he assumes she's writing is something bad about him, that he's not good enough. And then he gets a 95% on his next test. We all know that's an A+. Great job. You probably worked hard to get that. Congratulations. And he walks out saying, "Gosh, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I second-guessed myself on that last question." We all relate to this. We all do this on a daily basis.
It sounds so ridiculous, and yet we all are living it.
We do it. And the problem isn't that we believe things that are not true. The problem is that we believe they're facts. Because of this lens that we take on through our beliefs, we stack decades of evidence to support things that aren't true. And we might even know they're not true. Like, do we know that things are going to work out in the end? Yeah. But when we take a step back, we're like, it's all going to work out. Or do we know, there's enough time? Or do we know truly deep down that we're capable? Yes. But in the moment, do we believe it? And the answer is no. So it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you believe, because what you believe ultimately creates your emotional experience, which drives your behaviors, which dictates the outcomes, whether they're desired outcomes or undesired outcomes in your life.
Yeah, that's so good. I've been thinking about your statement earlier about this is the process of shedding away, chipping away what isn't just our like purest self. And I just had this thought pop in when you were right at the beginning. You were talking about becoming who you really are, becoming more of who you really are. And I could just hear the voice of maybe some people listening out there or whoever saying, well, what if I don't really like who I am?
Yeah.
How do you address
it's a very,
this?
really, very real question that comes up often. What a scary thing. I just want to acknowledge, like, this journey of becoming that's hopefully going to bring happiness and peace and all the things that we want, only to get to the end of it and be like, oh, but I'm not a good person. Like, it sucks being me. I don't want to be me because I'm broken, right? Something's wrong with me. And this is a concern that people have. And one of my clients, she's the mother of 6 children and has an autoimmune disease. So I think everyone would agree she deserves to sleep in. She's tired, right? She and her husband go to Hawaii for a vacation to celebrate their 15th anniversary. And instead of sleeping in at 3:30 in the morning, their first night there, she's wide awake. So bummed, right? Just no kids. Her 6 kids are at home, and she's not getting the morning she needed. And she lays there in the pitch dark blackness, not knowing what to do, not wanting to wake up her husband unnecessarily. And she does the one thing that she can think to do, which is to pray. She lays there and she prays. And she asks God, she says, is there a reason why I'm awake? Is there something you want to tell me? And she listens, and she doesn't get a response or doesn't hear it. And so she says, okay, I'll ask another question. And she, out of her mouth just comes the question, and it surprises her because it's also the deepest philosophical question that has been tried to be answered since the beginning of time. And she asked God, who am I? In a beautiful moment, God immediately answered. This is what she heard. Think of your best moments. That's who you really are. So for the person that's wondering if when they find out who they really are, it's someone that's not lovable, that's not capable, that's not beautiful and awesome, they can think of the best moments of their life and realize that that's who they really are. And that when you really understand who you really are, you cannot feel anything but love towards yourself because you are the perfect man inside the David statue. You are whole, which is, I love the Greek or Hebrew translation of perfect as whole. I'm awesome. I'm funny. I'm curious. I'm handsome. I'm passionate. I'm loving. Like all these things I can say about myself without comparing to others. Pride enters the moment we compare either up or down. We think we're better or worse than others. But instead, you realize, like, I went from wounded bird to now I feel like a self-proclaimed
soaring eagle.
Freaking falcon is what I say. I'm a freaking falcon.
The
like,
crimson
it's
sage.
awesome, right? Yeah. And so that's what I would say is that who you are, you are who you are when you're in a powerful state. And I used to say I hate myself as a kid. My mom reminded me a few years back of how hard those times were as a teenager. And I thought I was my mistakes. I thought I was my suffering. And I just was completely wrong. I am awesome. And our mutual friend, Nikki Covington, who is what I call my Mr. Miyagi in real life. Like, he is amazing. He shared with me the difference between self and ego. And I'm sure this is a topic that someone else could talk for decades on, but the difference between self and ego, I'll say it this way. If you were to imagine the words to describe ego, someone who has a big ego or is egotistical, how would you describe them? What do you think someone's trying to say when they say someone's egotistical or has a big ego?
Like cocky. They're kind of a jerk.
What else?
Self-centered. They're
Yeah. I think ego is like the way that you're trying to be perceived by others. So
Mhm.
it's like a propped up kind of mask of who you're trying to project
Totally.
of who you are.
And
That's
how it ends up coming across is self-centered.
yeah.
Sometimes we'll say self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
We might say full of themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just check this out. This is so awesome. So you have self, which is not ego, and you have ego, which is not self. Okay?
Say that again.
We have self,
Okay.
not ego, ego that's not self. They're two separate things,
Okay.
right? And we're calling ego using the same word as self, and it's not. We're saying ego is self-centered. It's self-absorbed. It's full of self. But it couldn't be more untrue. It's empty of self, not full of themselves.
Oh,
It's not self-centered. It's off-centered from self,
Mhm.
right? It's not absorbed with self. It's void of self. And so who you are, self, is so beautiful, and it's everything that the ego is not. It's who you are when you're in a powerful state. And so becoming, my message to the world is that becoming is not a destination, but a return. We're trying to be better by 1% every day to eventually arrive at our potential. And what I found is that you can stop living with potential and you can start living in your potential in any single moment you return to a powerful state. You're your highest, best, most powerful self when you're in a powerful state. And that happens to be who you are, which is so empowering when you realize to learn how to rewire your brain and to become who you really are doesn't mean you need to change. Doesn't mean you need to adopt the millionaire morning routine and be like Elon Musk or anybody else, but that you can be who you really are. You don't want to be like Mitch. You don't want to be like John. You don't want to be like Mike. You want to be just who you really are. And that's the comforting and empowering part about this, is that you already mastered it when you were 1, 2, and 3 years old. It's not this new skill. It's just learning how to let go of the suffering so you can return.
So we've talked a little bit about the process of rewiring the brain. We might want to recap that really quick. If you were able to just outline, like, what does that process look like? And it's connected to this kind of the same question, is like, how does one move from a state of suffering to a powerful state?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So there's 3 phases of rewiring your brain. Awareness is the first phase. Breakthrough is the second. And transformation is the third. And if we were to just simply articulate what each of those phases are and what they do, is awareness is having true awareness, one, that you are suffering, instead of just escaping it and not
Avoiding,
addressing it,
numbing.
and annoying. Yeah.
Yep.
We have to first recognize and allow our suffering.
Yeah.
And then identify what's truly causing it. That's true awareness. People think self-awareness is a whole lot of other things. But if the journey of becoming starts with our suffering, because suffering is what we need to let go, true awareness is allowing and recognizing that we're suffering and then identifying what's causing it. So the question is, what's causing our suffering? Most people think what's causing their suffering is the things that are happening to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the things outside of us, the things we call circumstance. Circumstances are neutral, meaning they don't create our emotions. They're not good or bad. There's no such thing as a good teacher, a bad boss, or a difficult childhood. There's a teacher, a boss, and a childhood, and the meaning we assign to the teacher is that they're a good teacher. The meaning we assign is that they're a bad boss. The meaning we assign is we had a difficult childhood, because they're a neutral experience, that life is what it is, and we determine with the meaning we assign to it how we feel about it, right? And so the example that I demonstrate this with is, let's say someone that you love deeply passed away a few hours ago. How do you feel? What would you say? How do you feel if someone you love passed away?
Yeah, sorrow and
Sorrow.
grief.
Yeah.
And let's say you don't know that they passed away a few hours ago. You don't know about it. How do you feel?
Well, you feel nothing.
Nothing.
don't
The
know.
same.
Yeah,
Yes.
neutral, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're feeling. Somebody the other day said stressed because they misheard the question. And we laughed because it's like, well, if you're already feeling stressed, then you keep
You'll
feeling
continue,
stressed.
yeah.
But in other words, the circumstance happened, death, but you don't know about it and you don't feel anything. So circumstance happened, you don't feel. Did the circumstance create your emotion?
Well, there's a lack of awareness of the circumstance.
Once we know about it, we start
Yeah.
to experience this thing called thought.
Yeah.
And our thoughts and the meaning we assign to the experience ultimately create our emotions. And if circumstances did, once we know about it, if they did create our emotions, then every single person with every single death would feel the same emotion from death. Versus if your child dies, it's a very different experience than your 105-year-old great-grandmother who died holding your hand singing your favorite song, who's been battling cancer for 30 years and wants to reunite with her husband, who she's been missing for 4 decades, right? We might feel, my grandma calls it graduation, death.
Yeah.
And so we can feel happy and relieved that someone died. And grief we're always going to feel, which is sadness based on loss. But that's, again, coming back to the powerful state versus suffering state. It's useful. Grief is actually a powerful state. It's useful. And so awareness begins when you take responsibility for your life, for everything in your life. And what does that mean? Response ability is your ability to respond. Response ability. It's not saying that these things are your fault that have happened, because you may have had trauma and abuse, and it's not taking blame for the things, but it's saying I have a choice in how I respond regardless of the circumstance. And the way we respond is by changing the meaning that we assign to our experience. And that's where a breakthrough happens. Once we realize that we're in a suffering state and we allow that emotion instead of escape it and identify the true cause of our suffering, now we can break through it. In a breakthrough, it happens in a single moment. It's the moment we move from a suffering state to a powerful state. That's what a breakthrough is. And Jesus said, and when you know the truth shall make you free. The cause of all suffering is believing something that's not true. When we believe something that's not true, we're out of alignment with who we really are, and it causes this suffering. And when we see that thinking as unintelligent, as a flat out lie, as untrue, then we have the opportunity now to discover some form of the opposite that must be true. And that truth sets us free, meaning it moves us from a suffering state to a powerful state. I'll give you an example from Belize. I was in Belize this last year facilitating a retreat. And I don't know if anyone listening has ever been to a 300-acre luxury resort in the middle of Belize. But if you have, the last thing you're supposed to do is wake up totally frustrated. And that's my experience. I wake up totally frustrated at 5:50 in the morning. With no exaggeration, the loudest land animal on planet Earth is outside my open window thatch roof cabana howling. It's a howler monkey. And this monkey is howling just rah, rah, like unbelievable. Really cool, but not really cool at 5:50 in the morning when I brought my whole family. And my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old are now wide awake, and there is no hope that they're going to go back to bed. And so I'm laying there just totally frustrated. And I recognize that I'm in a suffering state. It doesn't feel useful to be frustrated in this moment, and I know that. And I allow the emotion. An emotion only lasts for 90 seconds in our bodies. And not to say that anybody shouldn't feel feeling for more than 90 seconds, but if you allow yourself for 90 seconds, that's sufficient to fully embrace and allow it without escaping it. And that's powerful to know. And so I allow it, and I ask myself to find the cause of my suffering. Why am I suffering? Or why am I frustrated is the question I asked. And the brain does this funny thing. Even as someone who knows that circumstances are neutral, it always loves to blame the circumstance. And I'm like, well, I'm frustrated because the stupid howler monkey is howling at 5:50 in the morning, and my children are awake, and they're not going to go back to sleep. And now there's a 99% chance they're going to have temper tantrums and meltdowns for the rest of the day. And I realized, wait a second, those things can't be. Those things are outside of me. Circumstances, the things outside of us that are also, by the way, outside of our control, don't create our emotions. And so I ask the question again, what's actually creating my suffering? And I know that it's always my thinking. The problem is never the problem. The problem is always our thinking. That's what we're responsible for. That's what allows us to have this ability to respond, is to address our thinking. And so the thinking that I had was very simple. It was, this is ridiculous. This should not be happening right now. At 7 a.m., 8 a.m., that would be awesome if it was happening, but it should not be happening at 5:50 in the morning. This is ridiculous. And I asked now I know that this can't be true, because 100% of the time, the thinking that's creating our suffering is a flat out lie. It's not true. And so I asked myself, is it true? Is it ridiculous that a howler monkey is howling in the jungle of Belize? I start busting up laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I think this was ridiculous, right? And I realized that everything was happening the way it was supposed to. And this is powerful, because if a lie is a lie, then some form of the opposite must be true, because lies and truths are opposite. So I believe that this is ridiculous. And long story short, later, I told my son about this experience, because I exposed them to these principles of moving from suffering to power and how to rewire their brain. And I shared with him the experience, and he says, "Dad, you're being ridiculous to think that the howler monkey shouldn't be howling." And so some form of the opposite was not, this is ridiculous, but the thinking is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then this shouldn't be happening to everything's happening the way it's supposed to. So fast forward, I go back to a powerful state, right? I'm laughing, I'm myself again. And instead of saying, "Hey kids, be quiet, keep your eyes closed for the next 30 minutes," from my frustration, saying, "We're not leaving this place until the sun comes up," instead I said, "Hey guys, get your shoes on." They're like, "Huh?" And I said, "Get your shoes on. Let's go try to find the monkey." And so we go out of our cabana and we go on the suspended bridge, and we're above this beautiful canopy in the jungle. 30 yards in front of us is this howler monkey, and we just get to watch this howler monkey howl. And if you ask my then 3 and 5-year-old what their favorite part of Belize was,
The monkey.
That was
you
the
guessed
moment.
it.
Yeah.
It's the monkey. So I almost missed out on a key moment of my kid's life because I was in a suffering state, which is what happens when we're in a suffering state. But by being in a powerful state, I was able to be who I really am and to love and give and serve and create with the people that I love the most. And from that place, you could have guessed it, but my son had a meltdown and a tantrum later that day. And keep in mind, I'm facilitating a retreat where I'm helping these families learn how to be deeply present and be in a powerful state regardless of their circumstance. And I just had 60 seconds of content to tell my son, which is that he was running away when my wife needed him, but she's holding our 18-month-old who's kind of a burning hot baby in Belize, and she's exhausted, right? And he wasn't listening to her. So I just wanted to say, "Hey, mom's the queen. Remember, she's the queen. Everything she shares with us is helpful. It's going to make your life more fun. Will you make an agreement with me that you'll listen to her when she calls your name?" But he wouldn't listen to me for 40 minutes. He sat on the stool across from me. I said, "You can go as soon as I'm able to just share this with you. It'll take 60 seconds. And he goes, "No." I'm like, "Okay." And so I stay with him. I'm patient. I'm chill. And he's like saying, "You're the worst dad in the world. And you never want me to have fun." And everybody in the retreat is right below us and can hear all of this. I'm like, you were tempted to go back into a suffering state. But because I had done this work that morning and found this truth, which is that everything is happening the way it's supposed to, when we find the truth sets us free and allows us to see a new lens by which we perceive reality. And the lens I had was howler monkeys are howling, and sleep-deprived children, poor kid, is having an emotional meltdown because he doesn't have enough sleep. Everything's happening the way it's supposed to. I was able to just remain totally calm for those 40 minutes and just say, like, "I love you. I'm so sorry. Your dad doesn't want you to have fun. I love you so much. I know that's hard." And eventually he says, "Okay, what do you want to tell me?" And he comes and said, "Come here." And he comes and sits on my lap, and I tell him, "Mom's the queen and she wants you to have fun, and will you listen to her?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "What did you learn?" And he says, "Mom's the queen, wanted to have, she always wants us to have fun." And he puts his arms around my neck and he hugs me so tight. And he gives me a kiss on the cheek. He says, "I love you, Dad." I was just so grateful that I found the truth instead of believing this lie and having my morning be filled with frustration and inevitably having to escape it before I lead this retreat because that's all that I would have wanted to do. But instead, I was who I was. I was the real Mitch Whiting, which is awesome. I'm an awesome dad. It's not true that I'm the worst dad in the world. It's not true that I don't want my son to have fun. And that's why he was in a suffering state, because he was believing something that wasn't true.
Okay, so
good.
Did we get those 3 phases?
So that's the third phase is
transformation. Yes.
Yep. And the third phase is transformation, where your beliefs, you don't experience the present. You experience the present through the filter of the past. And when you know this, it makes a lot of sense about the life makes more sense of how easy it can be. We have type 1 versus type 2 thinking, which is systematic thinking versus automatic thinking, where you notice that when you're driving down the road, you get somewhere 10 minutes down the road and you don't even know how you got there. It just became so natural, right? You didn't even think, you didn't check the
Autopilot.
mirror, you didn't remember turning on the keys and shifting the gear, and you just do it, right? Autopilot. Well, we start out not that way with systematic thinking, where it takes a lot of energy. And the brain's role one of the many roles is to conserve energy in the name of survival. If it will combust and will explode if we exert too much energy, right? And so I have to think about, remind me of I have to think about where I was.
Transformation.
So we have systematic versus automatic thinking, and so we don't experience the present. We experience the present through the filter of the past. And so a simple example is when you see a square rectangle shape in the middle of a wall with a piece of metal in it, you know automatically, instead of systematically, you just know that if I push, pull, twist, I'll enter a new space, right? You don't have to think about it and address it as a new thing every time. It's really efficient, and we get really efficient. Well, we don't experience the present. We experience the present through the filter of the past. And so our beliefs shape our reality. And when we know this, we can now use it for us instead of against us, which is that we can change. You can't change the past, but you can change the meaning you assign to the past. And so what this looks like is finding evidence, strong evidence from the past that supports the truth that you've just found. And so when I thought about this, everything's happening the way it's supposed to, and I looked for evidence in the past, I thought about some pretty horrific things that have happened. I'm like, but did everything happen the way it's supposed to?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a challenging thing to confront and to see, could that really be true? But I also know that 100% of the time, the beliefs that create our suffering are lies, and some form of the opposite must be true. And I thought, what if this really was true? And I thought about these terrible events, and I thought, one of the core laws of this universe and the gifts that God has given us is the ability to choose. That every human on earth has the ability to choose. It's called agency. And these horrible things that have happened, it's not that the thing should have happened, but that everything was happening the way it was supposed to, in the sense that humans got to choose and they made poor choices, but that they were able to choose. And so agency is happening the way agency is supposed to happen, which is that bad choices are going to be made if good choices can be made. And so I realized, like, wow, like everything is happening the way it's supposed to, meaning people are able to make choices and they're making choices. And then you start seeing your entire past. You can't think of a single time where anything happened where it didn't happen the way it's supposed to, because people were able to make choices and they did. And now moving forward, your lens shifts to seeing the truth, and the thought might come up like, this shouldn't be happening. You're on your way to work and you're in traffic and you left early enough on time and there's 2 accidents and you're like, this shouldn't be happening. I did everything in my power to make it happen and I can't believe this. Instead, you might have that thought and then you think, I can't believe I believed that for so long. It's just not true. What's true is everything is happening the way it's supposed to. And now you start seeing how life isn't happening to you, but how it's happening for you, because you see the truth, which brings peace and brings confidence. And you might show up, you might make an immediate call and apologize from a powerful state that you're going to be late. And people might judge you, but you can let go and not even care because it was out of your control, and you can remain who you are regardless of your circumstance because you're free from the truth.
Okay. I was studying a little bit on this, the cause of suffering, like looking at different wisdom traditions.
Yes.
And it's just cool how the way you're talking about it, I just see a lot of parallels, which is ignorance is a source of suffering, deception, and then resistance of reality, like denying or rejecting reality. And that to me is like, it's just coming through in what you're saying in just a different way, but it feels like it's kind of reinforcing those concepts. And then this idea of being able to choose our perception, right, of what's happening in our lives. And, I think there is sort of a tendency to want to make good of, I'm going to give it a good label. And that goes
Silver
back
line.
to the positivity thing. And like, maybe just to wrap up, if you have just a thought on like, how do we discern between sort of toxic positivity or like, I have to label everything as it was good or it was bad, and versus just like an acceptance or surrender of reality. Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting how the truth sets us free, not positive thinking sets us free.
Yeah.
Where I've had experiences with clients where the truth is really painful,
Yeah.
where it hurts, where it might be like addressing something through honesty
Mm-hmm.
with someone that they love that's really painful and really scary. But when they realize that it's the truth
Mm-hmm.
and it will set them free, on the other side of that is those good feelings, but it might not feel good. in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's this distinction of useful versus not useful is so helpful. And I first discovered this while coaching a client who felt anger. And so I'm thinking, okay, he's in a suffering state. Because at the time I thought suffering state doesn't feel good. Powerful state feels good.
Right.
And it's still this idea of positive and negative emotions.
Yeah.
And so I'm about to like lead him down the path, right, of enlightenment in this moment. And I said, okay, tell me how, you're in a state of anger. Does that feel useful or not useful? And I'm leading him to say not useful, so I can say this is suffering, right? And he says really useful. And my brain breaks in that moment years ago. And I'm like, what? Anger's bad, right? And I said, tell me more. Thank goodness I asked that question, because he said, well, my dad is a drug addict and he's manipulating me in his business. And it's time for me to leave. It's time for me to start my own business. And I later learned that the purpose of anger, the useful purpose of anger, is to help us to recognize and correct injustice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. Anger doesn't feel good, but it is useful when it's based on truth. And if we have a perceived injustice, which is not seeing reality, then that anger won't feel useful. And we each have this emotional compass in us that helps us to know. Everyone around the world that I've coached, 9 different countries, over 250 people, they know immediately when I ask them, does this emotion, feel it, allow it, and then I ask, does it feel useful or not useful? They always know the answer. It's incredible. We have it in us to know.
Wow, that's awesome.
So powerful.
Mitch, thank you so much. Yeah, that was just
I
a
love you
ton
guys
of good
so much.
stuff. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all these insights and your personal journey of like getting to the place where you are now of just practicing this stuff, and it's a daily practice, right?
It is.
And it's an awesome thing. So yeah, thank you.
So good. So where can people find you?
Yes.
Anybody listening, where can they find you? What do you have for them that they can read maybe in the future at some point?
Yeah, you can go to LinkedIn and find my profile, Mitch Whiting, where I create content very regularly and teach these principles and share stories to help people understand and to be inspired to take action, right? And to start applying these things in their life. You can also go to mitchwhiting.com, where you can find a free assessment. And that assessment is called the Passion, Purpose, and Progress Assessment, the 3 Ps. And in that assessment, for many people, if this podcast resonated with you, that assessment will resonate with you and give you language in words for what you've been experiencing for years and most likely decades, where you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so understood, but I also have so much clarity on what I'm experiencing and what I really want. And for those that have that kind of experience, it's created in a way that you'll be led to my calendar. And I'm happy to spend a free hour with any of you to have a consultation and to see where you are, where you want to be, and what specifically for you it would take to create that.
So good.
Right on. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
We love you. Thank you for being on
Love
the
you
show.
so much.
Love you.